Welcome, everyone, to the week in review, the week ending November 12th, 2021. It was a good week. Welcome, Jacob.
Welcome.
And so we started off the week discussing with Chris the four agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz. And what were your thoughts about that one?
Well, what first having Chris on was fun. It's always a good time having him with us at Pot to Deliver here and getting his 2 cents. And I always get a lot of what he says because we all live our own lives and we all see things a little differently, or we all are going through different things, and how this book has influenced our lives over the last few years, and then how our father was a big fan of this author and this, or at least this book, I should say. And for me, Ruben, it just brings me back to a situation I was 4 or 5 years ago where I was probably in my darkest times, and Dad knew that. And then when he suggested this book, probably for the third time in my life with him, it was a time where I was really thinking my words were impeccable. I thought my words were, and they weren't. Um, I knew I was saying things, probably more for things at work that I shouldn't be sharing. Um, get away from that gossip. And then the biggest one was just taking things too personal. And I would create this whole scenario in my head, um, when people would share things with me, and how it would affect me. And I just let it do that. And this was, like I said, a few years ago at work, where I just let that just penetrate me, and I wish I didn't. And so, going back to this book, it reminded me of that situation 4 or 5 years ago where I was at my darkest times, really my darkest time, really depressed, and just realizing that these four agreements really did um, have an effect on me, and also to do my best, of course, to not take things so personally. And I did. I took things quite a bit. I took things personal quite a bit at that time, and I still do. I just have to work on it, and I'm reminded often. I hear Dad's voice in my ears
Yeah,
sometimes too, and I'm like, oh yeah, I just can't
it,
take it personal.
it is um, interesting, the idea of you going through a difficult circumstance, instead of looking to the outside environment as to the source of it. Well, what have I done? Where can I improve myself? And that's a really good strategy for life, for sure. And this book's a good starting point. So I like what you say about that. I want to point something out that I kind of hinted at in our interview or discussion with Chris, but the idea that uh, in this book, The Four Agreements, I don't agree with everything, right? But do you read a book where you don't agree with everything, but you will see some powerful truths in there? And I would submit yes. There's a part in the book early on where he talks about this idea of the book of law. He sets this scenario up when you believe in a book, and you can kind of look at that as, in the real world, like as the Bible or the Quran or something that you trust. And then it says, whatever, whenever you go against that book or you come up against something that's against that book,
Mm-hmm.
you feel a funny sensation in your solar plexus, and it's called fear. Breaking the rules in the book of law opens your emotional wounds, and your reaction is to create emotional poison. I think the idea of reading something or engaging in something that might transgress that book of law, making you feel uncomfortable, might be okay to feel uncomfortable, because it might challenge you to reinforce your ideas or question your ideas. Why do you believe what you do? Pushing yourself. So you can look at it as a book that makes you do that, or taking a class where you think that the professor doesn't hold your ideology. You and I talked to somebody not long ago. Or maybe it wasn't you, actually. I was talking to somebody who was uncomfortable taking a class that might not vibe with his ideas. But I think Ruiz would argue, you should, because it's going to strengthen your argument or it's going to push your beliefs, and that's a pretty good thing. It's not a negative thing.
Yeah, can I just share? I think that I've grown in that area of reading books that maybe I don't always entirely agree, and I think though that I think if it's something like an ideology or thinking that's the whole book, that's just that I think I have a little trouble with that. But if there's bits and pieces that you could take out of it, I say you should, go for it. You should. That'll make you, like you're sharing it, just bring more to you as a complete person. I think a whole person. So yeah, it's a good idea.
Okay. Yes. So then the next day we talked with Flavia Cabrera Rodgers, and what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I do want to share one thing because she and I have talked since then, and she refers to a book that she's read, and it just has had a big impact on her. It's called "The Body Keeps the Score" by Bessel van der Kolk. And that book, I know, and we were talking about just trying to be people to keep I think you even mentioned it, to keep yourself healthy, to look out for yourself. I think those were your words. Look out yourself. And I think we don't always do that. And if we're not looking out for ourselves, how can we look out for our students? And if we're not healthy, I know there've been times, like I told you, like 4 years ago with the 4 agreements, there was a time where it was just really dark, and I could tell that I was bringing that in the classroom just because I was gloomy, doomy, and the kids feel it. They'll ask you, "What's wrong? How are you doing?" And then talking to her, I realized it's so important for us to get ourselves right. And then, of course, I like when she was talking about just checking in the mornings. We brought that up, that, hey, it's good to continue those SEL lessons, see how they're doing, because the kids are going through a lot right now.
Okay. Very nice. And then and keep in mind, I think for myself, that's important. And also students who are wearing masks all day, not socializing as much as they have in the past, maybe. So what are you going to do a little differently in class to sort of open it up a little bit, experiment a little bit, make them feel a little bit more comfortable, not be as hard-lined? I know I've considered that. This last week, I found 2 or 3 of my students drawing on my whiteboard, and they were doing a little contest. And normally I would never allow that. I would have broken it up. I would have said, "Why are you out of your seat?" But I actually sat there and watched them do it. And they were laughing. They were laughing at each other's drawings. And I watched it and I allowed it. And I think that it's good. It was nice to hear students laugh. So
sure. That's great. That's a good strategy. Just let it go, because I think sometimes we're so intense, and just a little bit more. Let go of the rope a little bit more right now. Very good.
Right. So we ended the week with this story about this teacher in Florida, but this teacher is in Ohio. This teacher is in New York, Kentucky, California. They're everywhere. They get in trouble and this particular woman became pregnant from her student and is in jail. What do you think about all this?
Well, like you said, it happens everywhere in the country. And I know I've been at schools where it's happened and people have been dismissed, or, there's been definitely some consequences. And I think we were talking about how do we, how does administration talk to the teachers? I don't think they can, in a way. I mean, they could check up on them and say, ask them some general questions. But I think for us older teachers, it's good to just grab onto a younger teacher and just be their mentor. I have the opportunity to be a mentor to.
Careful how you word it. It's good as an older teacher. It's good to grab onto a younger teacher. That might
not to grab them physically, but to be in their space. Be into their, go visit their room. I'm sorry. Thank you, Ruben, for PC.
It's the wrong video to use that language.
I apologize. So go ahead and meet those people that are new to your school and be there for them and to encourage them. Give them not just advice in this area, but in all types. But then this topic does come up, and to share things, what you do to help you with that. Especially younger teachers get this a lot more because they're very close in age with the students. And the students are excited because they relate to the music, they relate to the things that are coming up the pike regarding things that any interest, sports, entertainment. Like I was thinking about anime. Like I'm just totally out to lunch in anime, but there's a lot of young teachers who know that and they love it, and they get to talk their language with the kids. And so my point is that if you do that, then you have those comfortable conversations with young teachers that say, hey, you know what, these are the kind of things that I've done to help me. And I know when I was younger, this came up a little bit more. You could tell sometimes the kids are paying attention to you a little bit more than normal. You're like, wait, what's going on here? I need to make sure I take hold of that.
I'm not sure how this is related to the topic, though. What do you mean?
With teachers who are having inappropriate relationships with students?
You start talking about like specifically what.
No, my point was this: is that have those conversations with those younger teachers, all types of topics. However, what if you become comfortable with that person and you're working with them and you're their mentor?
Bring up this topic.
You can now bring up that topic and give them that advice, because now they're open to it. You know what I'm saying? And that's where I was going at.
Okay. It was just taking on detours that I was not sure where you were going.
I think
I have a well, now that I helped focus you. Now they do. What about this idea of? I have a question that I was thinking. What about they used to have this thing called the rubber room? Do they still have it? That's a terminology or expression where they would isolated teachers who have been accused of something, it hasn't been confirmed, or there hasn't been an arrest or anything, and they make them sit in an office.
Teacher jail. Yeah.
Well, I know teacher jail, rubber room, but what it is it's this place that they don't teach. They do other office things until a accusation has been confirmed. Does that still exist?
I was being a jerk. I was saying, thank you for clarifying it, Ruben. But I think
people don't know. People don't know what it means. I'm just trying to give them background on what it is. Yeah.
I think it does exist. And,
still there.
I'm almost. No, it does exist, because that's still happening, right? That still happens, and I think bigger districts, it plays a bigger part because there's so many schools. Smaller districts, I'm not sure if that happens in a smaller district. They might just send you home, right? Suspend you. Because I've heard that before with smaller districts, but with larger districts like the one I'm with, definitely we have that situation still.
Because at our school, there was an accusation. Friend of mine, fellow teacher, and he was immediately pulled. And I want to say this because I don't think we spent any amount of time talking about. Not all of those who have been accused are guilty. So there was no time of him going somewhere. It was just, we're going to pull you until the facts are in or until we see more information. But he was pulled for weeks and then months.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, well, if this person is innocent, if this was a confusion, if this is a mistake of some kind, that reputation is dust. It's gone. I mean, he's been gone for so long. Kids are already talking. He's not going to. I knew he wasn't going to come back.
Well, in education, you're guilty before innocent. It is. You're guilty before innocent. They pull you out, even if you're totally innocent. So,
we do need to say though that there are people who will be falsely accused, maybe in some of these instances. We got to keep that in mind too.
And I think what happens, the sad part, Ruben. Sometimes I have had a friend that's happened to that. They are exonerated. They are cleared, but because what you just shared, they have such a black mark on them already at that school. They find themselves having to transfer.
Right.
And they've done nothing wrong, or very minute that it was kind of blown out of proportion sometimes, and that's unfair.
Yeah. So, all right, everybody. Can
I just share one thing?
Yeah.
And you didn't mention that I'm still wearing Dodger gear and the season's over, because I still really bleed Dodger blue. I just wanted to mention that.
All righty then. Let's move on. Thank you, everybody, for checking out the pod and review the week. Check out our show next week and ring the bell for notifications, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.